Welcome back to QuickSpeak, the English podcast, where we explore all sorts of fascinating topics. Today, we're diving into something I think we can all relate to, feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And it's more than just having a lot on your plate, you know? It's like
Ye-
this whole mind-body response to, well, life.
Yeah, those curveballs life throws our way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like they're coming at us faster and faster.
Yeah.
But I guess figuring out how to deal with that starts with noticing it's even happening, right?
Exactly. It's tempting to just like power through it, put your head down and just go, go, go. But honestly, that usually makes things worse in the long run. What actually helps more is learning to pause and reflect.
Interesting. Because it seems so counterintuitive, right? To slow down when everything inside of you is just screaming, go faster.
Yeah.
But I guess that's part of the problem, isn't it?
It is. Overwhelm just feeds off that always-on feeling. But when you hit pause, even just for a little bit, you start to feel more in control. And that's where self-reflection comes in. Think of it like being a detective, but for your own stress.
I like that, a stress detective. Okay, so where do we even begin?
By identifying what your personal triggers are. What are the things that really set you off? Is it taking on too much, the pressure to be perfect all the time? Or maybe it's unclear boundaries at work or in your relationships.
I can see how keeping a journal could be helpful for that.
Definitely. It's not about keeping a diary, but more about noticing patterns, like what was happening in the hours and days before you started feeling overwhelmed. Was it something external, something going on inside of you, or some kind of combination?
So paying attention to the subtle signs, not just the giant alarm bells.
Exactly. Maybe it's a certain tone of voice or a specific type of email, or even just feeling rushed that sends you over the edge. Once you know what your triggers are, you can actually start to figure out how to either avoid them completely or at least change how you react to them.
So it's about taking back some of that control, right? And this is where things like deep breathing come in.
Deep breathing is definitely part of it, but it's just one tool out of many. And all of these tools we're talking about kind of fall under this bigger umbrella of mindfulness.
Okay, so for people who are picturing like meditation retreats and chanting when they hear mindfulness, what's a more approachable way to think about it?
One really easy and effective technique is called the 4-7-8 breath. You just breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 7, and then breathe out slowly for 8. Anyone can do it, you can do it anywhere, and it does wonders for calming your nervous system down.
Wow, it's amazing how such a simple thing can have such a big impact. And it's not just about the breath itself, is it? There's also the body scan technique.
Right. Instead of just paying attention to your breath, you actually bring your attention to each part of your body one by one, starting with your toes and slowly moving up. It's a really powerful way to release tension that you didn't even realize you were holding on to.
It's like giving yourself a mental massage from the inside out. And it reminds us that overwhelm isn't just in our minds, right? It shows up in our bodies too.
Yeah.
Tight shoulders, clenched jaw, all of it.
Yes, exactly. And that's why mindfulness can be so helpful. It brings those physical sensations into our awareness, and then we can actually make a choice about how we want to respond.
So it's like we're interrupting that automatic stress response and saying, hang on a second, I'm driving this thing.
Exactly. And the more you practice these mindfulness techniques, the easier it becomes to access that calmer, more grounded state, even when it feels like the world's spinning around you.
It's like we're building a muscle, but for our brains. The more we use it, the stronger it gets, and the better we become at handling those tough emotions.
You got it. And what's really cool is that mindfulness isn't limited to sitting on a cushion and meditating. You can actually bring it into your everyday life no matter what you're doing.
Ooh, give me an example of that. I love practical tips.
Okay, so let's say you're feeling overwhelmed and you just need to reset. Pick any object you can see, a pen, a plant, anything. Now describe that object in as much detail as possible, as if you've never really seen it before. This does something really interesting to your brain. It kind of forces it to focus on the present moment and quiet down all that mental chatter.
So it's like a palate cleanser, but for your mind. And you can use anything. I love that.
Right. Or let's say you need something even more immediate, something you can use right when that overwhelm hits. That's when the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique can be a lifesaver.
Ah, yes. I've heard of that one. It involves your senses, right?
It does. You quickly name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. It's like hitting the reset button on your brain, pulling you back into your body in the present moment.
Such a great technique for breaking free from those spirals of overwhelming thoughts. It's like a lifeline when you feel yourself getting pulled under. But let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about how to stop that overwhelm from even taking hold in the first place. We touched on boundaries earlier, and those feel so crucial.
They really are, and this is where understanding your triggers becomes even more important. Boundaries are like these invisible lines that you draw to protect your time, your energy, and your well-being.
So it's less about building walls to shut people out and more about creating healthy space for yourself to thrive.
Exactly. And a huge part of that is getting comfortable with saying no. It's not a selfish word, it's a complete sentence. No, I can't take on that project right now. No, I need some time for myself this evening.
It's about honoring your own needs so you can actually show up as your best self for both yourself and the people you care about. It's not selfish, it's essential.
You got it. It's like putting on your own oxygen mask on an airplane before helping others. Taking care of yourself allows you to then engage with the world in a healthier and more sustainable way.
Love that analogy.
Right.
It perfectly captures why self-care is so important. But let's be real, setting boundaries can be really tough, especially at first. Any advice for those of us who struggle with that?
Absolutely. It's like any new skill, it takes practice. And the sooner you start practicing, the easier it'll be in the long run. Setting boundaries early on is so much less complicated than trying to change things later when resentment's already built up.
Makes sense, like laying down the ground rules right away instead of trying to renegotiate the entire agreement later.
Exactly. And a great place to start is with your core values. What truly matters to you? What are your non-negotiables? Once you're clear on those, you can start setting boundaries that actually protect what's most important to you.
So if family, creativity, and personal growth are your core values, you'd set boundaries to allow yourself to actually prioritize those things without feeling guilty or like you're always sacrificing something.
Exactly. And remember, boundaries don't have to be harsh or aggressive or delivered with a side of guilt. You can be calm and assertive, use I statements to express your needs without blaming other people. It's about open communication and collaboration, not conflict.
I love that emphasis on I statements. It's such an important way to communicate your needs without making other people defensive.
Right. And consistency is key. If you're wishy-washy with your boundaries, other people won't take them seriously. But when you're clear and you stick to them, over time, people will learn to respect them.
It's like training a puppy. Haha. Be patient, be consistent, and eventually they'll get it.
Ha! Perfect analogy. It does take time and effort, but it's so worth it. When you have those healthy boundaries, you have more time and energy for the things you enjoy. You feel less stressed, more in control, and that feeling of inner peace starts to become your new normal.
Sign me up. Speaking of inner peace, I'd love to talk more about how mindfulness can be used as a more long-term strategy for dealing with feeling overwhelmed. Because it's not just about those quick fixes, right?
No, not at all. It's about cultivating a deep sense of inner calm that affects every area of your life. And it's not about never having any thoughts. It's about learning to relate to your thoughts differently.
And meditation is often a big part of that, isn't it?
It can be, but there are other really effective practices too, especially for people who connect with visuals and imagery.
Ooh, like what? Give me an example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about that visual stuff.
Okay, so there's one technique that has two parts. Touch points, and then mountain meditation.
All right, I'm listening. Tell me more about those.
So with touch points, it's all about getting grounded in your physical body. You start by just noticing the feeling of your feet on the floor. Then you pay attention to the feeling of your clothes on your skin, maybe the weight of your hands in your lap, just becoming aware of all those little physical sensations.
Kind of like a quick check-in with your body to bring you out of your head and back into the present moment.
Exactly. And once you're feeling a little more grounded, then you can move into the mountain meditation.
Okay, so we're going from grounded to feeling like a mountain. I like where this is going.
Yeah. So you're going to picture yourself as this strong, steady mountain, super solid, with deep roots going down into the earth. And there might be a storm raging all around you, like all those thoughts and emotions swirling around, but the mountain, it just stays completely still.
Wow, I love that image. It's about finding that unshakable place within yourself, that quiet space in the middle of all the chaos.
Exactly. And there's another visualization I really like for those moments when you're feeling super overwhelmed emotionally. It's called anchor at the bottom of a stormy sea.
Okay, I'm picturing that stormy sea now, definitely feeling the overwhelm metaphor there.
Yeah.
But where does the anchor come in?
So imagine this heavy anchor being dropped down into the deepest part of that stormy sea. Now, no matter how wild the waves get on the surface, that anchor is staying put. It's holding the ship steady, keeping it from getting tossed around. And in this visualization, you are that anchor.
So it's not about pretending the storm isn't there. Those big feelings are still there, but you're choosing to ground yourself in something deeper and stronger.
Yes. You're not letting the storm control you. You're finding that place of peace within yourself that's always there, even when things are tough.
These visualizations are so powerful. I can see how practicing them regularly could really help with managing overwhelm over time. Like you're creating this mental safe space you can go to whenever you need it.
They really can be. And the best part is, there's no right or wrong way to do mindfulness. It's about finding what works for you and what feels good in your body.
It's a practice, not a destination. Speaking of finding what works, I'd love to talk about some of those more practical in-the-moment tips for when that overwhelm hits you out of nowhere.
Because sometimes you just need something to help you hit the reset button, right?
Exactly. We already talked about the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique,
Hmm?
but are there other ways to ground yourself quickly when you're feeling panicky or overwhelmed?
Yeah, sometimes I just feel like my brain needs to reboot or something. Totally. It's like you need to reset your nervous system.
Yeah.
And remember how we were talking about using your senses? One super simple thing you can try is running your hands underwater, switching back and forth between warm and cold every 30 seconds or so.
Oh, I love doing that.
Oh,
It feels so good, like a mini spa treatment at home. But it really does seem to help me mentally too.
it's the change in temperature, I think. It kind of interrupts that fight or flight response that takes over when you're stressed and brings you back into your body.
It's like a pattern interrupt for your brain. So clever.
Yeah, exactly. Another good one is to really focus on different textures, like feel the fabric of your clothes against your skin or run your fingers over something with a lot of texture. Even just paying attention to the feeling of your feet on the ground.
So we're talking about really tuning into those little physical sensations that we usually don't even notice.
Yes. Or you could try focusing on sounds instead. Listen for the ticking of a clock, or the hum of the refrigerator, or birds outside.
It's funny how much we tune those everyday sounds out right.
It really is. But being intentional about noticing them can be so grounding.
Uh-huh.
And here's one more. I call it the feet on the floor technique.
Okay, you're going to have to explain this one because it sounds almost too simple.
Oh, no, I know, but trust me on this. So, anytime you feel that overwhelm coming on, just shift your weight to your feet and really pay attention to the sensation of your feet pressing down on the floor.
So it's about feeling rooted, like literally connected to the ground.
Yes. It might sound silly, but it's a really powerful way to remind yourself that you're safe, you're here, you're present in this moment. And sometimes that's all it takes to feel more in control when everything else feels out of control.
It reminds me of that saying, just breathe. Sometimes the simplest advice is the most profound.
Definitely. All of these techniques are about reminding you that you have choices, even when it doesn't feel like it. You can change how you're feeling, you can interrupt that overwhelm, you can find your way back to calm.
It's so empowering to remember that we're not just helpless bystanders, right? We have the power to change things.
Yes. You have so many tools at your disposal, and the more you practice using them, the more natural they'll become. It really is like building a muscle. So the next time you're feeling overwhelmed, remember, you've got this.
I love that. You've got this. What a great mantra for life in general. Well, this has been such a helpful and insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today.
Of course. Always happy to talk about these things.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of overwhelm. Remember, learning to manage overwhelm is an ongoing process, so be patient with yourself, celebrate your wins, and don't be afraid to try different things to figure out what works best for you. And don't forget to subscribe to QuickSpeak for more fascinating topics, all discussed in English. We love hearing from you, so leave a comment and let us know what you'd like us to cover next time. Until then, take care and be kind to yourselves.